Hi everyone, welcome back to Job One for All. In this video we are going to close the interfaces topic. So let's just review everything that we saw so far. Interfaces are like classes. They are like contracts where you cannot create objects. So just a quick recap. If you try to create a new object from an interface, you will get a nice compilation error. But we're going to see in several videos ahead how we can work with anonymous classes, and then you will be able to create interfaces objects directly. But right now you cannot create a new data loader because it is an interface and you cannot create an instance, but you can have a reference variable that is the type of this interface, but you cannot instantiate the object. We're going to talk about polymorphism in the next video, and you will start understanding how this will work. And especially if you are planning to apply for some jobs where they do some tricky questions about interfaces, that is one you have to be careful. In interfaces, all the methods are public by default, and you cannot have a different access modifier. And when we are overriding, we do have a rule where the access modifier cannot be more restrictive. So they may trick you, for example, removing the public, and then in the database loader, they show you something in a piece of paper, something like this, asking, will this work? And it will not work. Why? Because we have a rule when overriding that the access modifier cannot be more restrictive. So even though you don't have it here in the data loader, it's by default public. So it means that every time you are overriding a method from any interface, you need to make sure that the method is public. And talking about access modifier, from the more restrictive to less restrictive, we have private is the most restrictive method access modifier, and then we have the default. Default is when you don't have any access modifier. It's considered a package access modifier or default access modifier. And then we have protected and public. So as you can see, the least restrictive is public, and if you create something public, you cannot add any other methods. But for example, if you create, let's say in one of the superclasses, default with access, a package level access, you can override in a subclass and add as protected or public. So you can always make it less restrictive, but you cannot make it more restrictive when you are overriding. And to finish, there are two new things that we didn't talk about. One is about attributes. All attributes inside a interface are by default static, public, and final. So you have to make sure that you initialize them, otherwise you have compilation error. As you can see, IntelliJ is telling us, okay, by default it's public static final, so it's redundant to add them here. And another thing is, and by default, by the way, you can access these the same way you do with regular static final attributes. And starting with Java 8, we can also have static methods inside an interface. Now, static methods, as the name implies, is just a regular static method. For example, actually retrieve max data size. Technically, you can access this, but I just want to show you something. So I'm adding just a println because the static method cannot be overridden inside a subclass. So this method belongs to the interface data loader. If you go to the database loader, I will copy this entire method and I will come to the database loader that implements data loader and I will add it here. As you can see, there is no override available for it. because static methods cannot be overridden. And here I would just say inside the class database loader. So now we have two methods with exactly the same name, but one is inside the data loader interface and another one inside the database loader class. Now if I go to database loader test, I can call both of them. So for example, data loader dot retrieve max data size and database loader dot retrieve the same method, max data size. When I execute, I will see two different outputs because there are two different methods. So there is no such a thing as overriding static method from an interface. Static methods, they belong to the class itself. The class or the interface. Interface is like a special type of class in the end. So I think that's everything that we had to talk about interfaces. You have to be very, very, very aware of how interfaces they work in Java, because almost, not almost, but all like frameworks, they will use somehow interfaces. And once you learn how to work with interfaces, there is something called, you are programming to interfaces, like interfaces oriented programming. It means that your code will be focused on interfaces and it will be decoupled. So when you have a code that is decoupled, it's a code that's easier to maintain, is easier to read, and is probably very much more organized than if you were not using interfaces. But for that, you need to learn how polymorphism works, and this is what we are going to do in the next video. So I think that's enough. See you there. Bye.